Hey, listeners, and welcome to a new episode of the Academy Anonymous podcast, where we are covering the final few weeks on the road to the Oscars 2026. As always, I'm your co-host, Joseph, and I'm here with...
I'm Jules, and as always, check out our website, framesandflicker.com, and our Twitter, @AcademyAnon. Both of those are listed on the cover art for the podcast. We know we've been MIA for a while. As you guys know, we work in the industry and we were taking a big work trip. So we've been a little bit missing in action, and we're eager to get back and finish this race, as well as we can.
Yeah.
Kind of taking the bellwether of what's going on.
Exactly.
There's been a lot that's going on, and it feels like it's just a tiny little sprint to the end now.
Yeah.
Because we've been out of town, we haven't been had a chance to update our charts. Hopefully that will change in the next few days. If you guys want to check that out, our prediction charts, where we'll be listing all the awards that all these filmmakers and films are winning. So make sure to keep an eye out for that.
That's on our website, framesandflicker.com. So excuse the hiatus, but a lot of things have happened. We're going to try to cover, I think, what has developed over the past couple of weeks. Listen, we're about 2 weeks away till Oscar winners, March 15, right? About 15 days. So we're very much at the very final sprint of this whole awards season, which has felt particularly long. As we speak, we're, at the cusp of seeing what the blowback is of the entire Netflix, Paramount, Warner Brothers deal. Yeah. Warner Brothers, very much set for an excellent Oscars haul on March 15. But so let's go over some current events and just set up the stage for what is the final 15 days. And, let's also say that, keep an eye on the episodes because we are getting ready to do our final predictions. Predictions coming up. Might split it in two. We'll have a discussion on that. We'll have that posted certainly before the Oscars, so you have an idea, and so you can put in your awards pool. I think we've been doing pretty good so far this season, and I think it's interesting because this last couple of weeks have started to break into a sort of way that we had thought, hey, maybe there's something here. And as we go through the most recent events, we'll start highlighting what that is. I want to start by saying, before we dig too deep into the award stuff, it's been a very tough beginning of the year, as film fans, as people in the film industries, as film lovers, like I'm sure all the listeners are, to see so many beloved artists pass away. And so we just want to acknowledge the amazing work and career and share our love with the incomparable Catherine O'Hara.
Absolutely.
Who
devastated.
Who just had just a tremendous filmography.
And it's such an incredible actor, such a genius of comedy, and such an incredibly dramatic actress as well. And to see her have this sort of late surge in her late career and have it cut short is just so devastating. It was absolutely shocking and devastating.
But she absolutely leaves a lasting legacy, of which, unfortunately, and very much to its the tarnish of the legacy of the Oscars, she never got nominated for an Oscar. And she was incredible in so many movies. She was incredible in Home Alone. She was incredible in For Your Consideration. If you're someone who loves, discussing Oscars, go and put For Your Consideration on. And she gave an amazing performance in that. After Hours, she's just an incredible actor. She will be missed in every Christopher Guest film.
I'm still suffering. Still suffering.
It's going to be a huge gap.
Such a huge loss for us.
I mean, and then we go from that to, we have the loss of Robert Duvall, who is an absolute legend in the industry. So incredibly accomplished, so incredibly diverse, an Oscar winner for Tender Mercies. Only one Oscar, which is kind of weird for like the breadth of his work, as a leading man, as a supporting actor, across genres and across projects, studio projects, independent projects. And his last nomination was for The Judge.
The Judge, 2014.
2014 supporting actor. But he's just an incredible, incredible performer. And certainly like one of the sort of poster kids for, 70s American cinema.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So that's 100%. Another huge, devastating loss.
Another big loss.
Someone who, barely got their flowers from the Oscars really was a documentarian, Frederick Wiseman.
Yes.
Passed away. And he is, again, just
master
such a
filmmaker.
Just like a titan of American documentary films.
Absolutely.
and like certainly like sort of a maverick in terms of like, I'm not going to cut my film to any specific duration. It's about, just spending the time exploring this thing, sort of a fly on the wall aesthetic. He was a staple of the New York Film Festival. And so I know that he will be missed, certainly missed at Lincoln Center. So that's another huge loss we had. Robert Carradine from the esteemed Carradine families passed away. Tom Noonan passed away.
Yeah, Tom Noonan.
If you're familiar with the work of Charlie Kaufman, you're going to recognize him, right? He was a voice actor on
Anomalisa.
He
was also in Synecdoche, New York.
That's right. Remember, he had that wonderful part in Synecdoche, New York. And then some people are going to remember him from his sort of standout part in Manhunter, I believe, from Michael Mann. And he was just an incredibly diverse actor. And he was also, I will say, an incredibly diverse artist, because he directed a really interesting film in the 90s. I think on nominated for Independent Spirit Award. Fantastic film. And so that's another big loss. And young James Van Der Beek, passed away certainly before his time. There's been a lot of coverage on that, and people will remember him for Dawson's Creek, but certainly showed up in several films. And then Eric Dane also passed away recently, and again will be remembered for his work on, for example, Grey's Anatomy. But most recently, he was on the film Americana, which went to South by Southwest. And so it's just been a tough start of the year so far, and we're only entering March.
Very tragic, especially when so many of these incredible artists, have passed from, more unfortunate or tragic circumstances, certainly way before their time. And in some cases at the cusp of their, peak of their powers. So, it's been pretty devastating.
I mean, and to say nothing also of, Jesse Jackson passed away, and not necessarily tied to the film industry, but very much, a subject of multiple documentaries, sort of was built into an aesthetic, I think, of a discussion that was going on maybe in Black cinema in the 90s, which was, extremely memorable now. So I think that's another major passing in terms of American culture, not necessarily film related, but there's, it's in the context, what he was,
an incredibly influential public figure.
Exactly. For cinema, for American cinema. And so it's been a tough start of the year. Let's hope that we have better luck for the next 9 months, that it's going to be a little bit easier. We just want to share our love and our thoughts with their friends, their families, and
all the film fans out there.
That's what I was going to say. From our point of view, certainly with all the fans who, again, their work just touched and influenced so much of our lives, and I'm sure we're all deeply, deeply grateful.
100%. It's hard to imagine, for example, for us, who are such big, for example, Catherine O'Hara fans, to imagine a world, and an industry without her.
It's a less bright industry, less bright world.
Yes. And so our thoughts, our condolences, and we're all with you guys suffering through these losses.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump to a couple of current events. I guess I want to start out by saying something not awards related, but I think in our previous episode we left off, there was a little bit of controversy brewing on the MARTY Supreme. It does not seem to have boiled over too much.
Well, I would say
blowback, maybe.
Well, I would say we haven't seen headline after headline about it, but I do think that it sort of nudged its way into the narrative of that film. I think we'll get into it. We'll get into it, but the coming out empty at the BAFTAs, I think, was very telling, or could be very telling. And so, in general, I just feel that the momentum that was there, when the nominations were announced, has been decreasing. I feel like you can feel that.
I think that's massively interesting. I think you're right. Maybe it's already started to pop its head in. Is it going to, play a bigger hand, finally at the Oscars? We should have mentioned, I think, that voting. Oscar voting has, I believe, it's going to start.
I think it started yesterday or the day before yesterday.
We're right into Oscar voting. And so these next few ceremonies, the ones that have passed, but certainly then the couple of weeks coming in, all these headlines, they're going to have an effect. But so I don't think it was a huge sort of debacle like Emilia Perez was last year. But I think you're right. There might be a little bit of a tarnish. We'll see what the extent is. I want to say on the plus side, I think it's at $95 million, which is the most grossing film for A24. In large part for Timothée Chalamet's very public sort of marketing scheme for the film. So congratulations for that. That may play a factor in terms of coming back from any sort of bad press that it was having for that slight moment.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say like at 95 million, it has outgrossed One Battle After Another by 20 million in the US.
Wow.
You know, so 75 mil for One Battle After Another in the US compared to 95 mil for A24.
That's crazy.
For a Safdie brother film with Timothée Chalamet.
That's crazy.
So that's interesting. I don't think that, I still think that One Battle has accumulated more money globally, you know, not by much, but I do think that there's something to be said about how the domestic box office really rallied behind Marty. Granted, it did get that Christmas push, which helps. You know, I mean, One Battle coming out in what is usually a disastrous month for movies in September. But so I wanted to say that. And with that, let's jump into some awards. I think, where should we start?
I think we're going to start with, I think, 2 awards that were not surprising in terms of the winner. And that is that Paul Thomas Anderson won his first DGA award. That's Directors Guild of America.
Right.
Recently, and that just really recently, One Battle just won the PGA award. I think if you've been hearing us for any time whatsoever during the season, I think we've been very adamant that this is not a race. This was always going to be One Battle After Another's to lose. It's certainly going to win Best Picture. I think there's absolutely no question, no doubt about that. And I think its win in those two, and its win there in the PGA and the DGA, I think solidifies that also.
I think that's a good point. I mean, I have been of the opinion that the race would get closer between One Battle and Sinners, and I certainly think if there's any film that could upset One Battle, it would be Sinners.
But I do feel like it's far away.
I do wonder. I know that on paper it seems like it's far away, but there's something to be said about, in all these other places where One Battle is winning, for the most part, it's because it's the most nominated film. That title was already taken away from it at the Oscars.
Right.
When it could have been the most nominated film.
Right.
But very clearly more members voted for Sinners.
Well,
you know?
But
So
I will also say that, you know, Sinners, because of its period piece detail, kind of lended itself more to, you know, One Battle could never get a visual effects nomination.
You're right.
You know,
you're right.
And One Battle could never, well, I guess it could have possibly gotten a makeup nomination, but I'm just saying, you know, even One Battle is surprised in getting a production design nomination.
Right. But I guess if they really loved it that much, they could have given it the costume design nomination. And again, if Sinners was maybe a little bit weaker, it could have missed that visual effects nomination. So I agree with you. I think that One Battle is still in, you know, the driver's seat. But I am saying that its toughest day was always going to be at the Oscars. Because at the Oscars, it's always going to end up having to fight the most nominated film. So we'll see if that comes into fruition.
Possibly.
But I think you're right. With the DGA win and the PGA win, One Battle After Another, certainly in the driver's seat. You know, it's not always that they coincide, right? The PGA and the DGA win. I believe that Nora did get both wins.
It did get both. But if I'm not mistaken, didn't Boyhood win both?
No, actually, Boyhood
lost a DGA.
Yeah, Boyhood, I believe, lost both to Birdman.
Lost both to Birdman.
Right. Yeah, but we are on the Nora winning both, and Oppenheimer won both. And so there may be, I agree, a little bit of a consensus forming. So those are 2 good wins. I also mentioned at the PGA Awards, K-pop Demon Hunters won on the animated side, which is pretty important because it got snubbed from BAFTA, even though I don't think it was a terrible BAFTA night for K-pop, and we'll talk about that when we talk about BAFTA. But so 2 really big awards already in the pocket for One Battle After Another in terms of guilds. So where do we go to next?
Let's see. Why don't we go through some periphery awards that just happened recently? The ACE gave away for editors, gave away their winners,
and so again, another award going to One Battle After Another on the comedy side, and then Sinners
on the drama
side. And again, it's setting the stage for what is going to be a 2-person fight, if anything, in Best Picture. I will say there has been some talk, you know, certainly after nominations, before nominations, about the whole F1 factor, and, you know, can F1 somehow squeak out a win
for what?
For editing.
Because
it is the car movie, whatever.
I feel like the momentum is on One Battle's side for that, for sure.
I agree. I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope that F1 does not win that.
Yes.
But so, yes, you saw the 2 Best Picture favorites pick up the big awards at the Ace Eddie. And then there was the Casting Society.
Yes, which I thought was very interesting.
Yes, it was.
Because it was one ceremony where one battle did not do well.
Yes. And so I believe it's the Artois Award. And so winners included on the low budget side, Sorry Baby, which was nice to see. On the independent side, Sentimental Value was able to beat out a movie like, for example, Blue Moon or Train Dreams. That's pretty interesting. And then on the big budget comedy side, you had Jake Kelly win, which is to me was interesting only because casting director Nina Gold was nominated twice. So for Jake Kelly and for Hamnet. And she got an Oscar nomination for Hamnet, right? And so she doesn't walk away from the Casting Society Awards without a win. She just gets the win for Jake Kelly, the film that doesn't have a shot. You know?
Well, she's a very revered
That's what I'm saying. She's so revered that she can still get the win for Jake Kelly, even though it's not even competing for an Oscar. Granted, no one in that category was competing for an Oscar. So on the big budget drama side, and this is where it's, I think, most important to focus, Sinners won, Francine Maisler. And it was able to beat out the Best Picture nominees, Hamnet, Marty Supreme, Frankenstein, F1, Begonia, all Best Picture nominees, like I said. But one movie, as you said, not included was One Battle After Another. So does that possibly set us up for a little bit of a dogfight in the casting category, the brand new, the inaugural casting category at the Academy, right? And this conversation, I think we can revisit it because it's going to be amplified when we talk about BAFTA, right? But so yes, Sinners walks away here, not a surprise, but again, it did not face its biggest adversary, One Battle, right. So then, what award show should we jump to next?
And then let's talk briefly about the Independent Spirit Awards, which also aired rather recently, maybe a couple weeks ago. And, not a lot of surprises there. Obviously, what tends to happen, unfortunately, with the Independent Spirit Awards and we're members, is that the films that end up winning are the films that are closest to Oscar recognition. So technically in the Best Picture 5, that was Train Dreams. And
so there was a lot of love for Train Dreams.
Right, which won Best Picture and Director.
Best Picture, Best Director, Best Cinematography.
And so not a big surprise that Train Dreams won that award. I do think that it's sort of as far as it'll go in terms of this award season, as you know, in terms of big prizes that it wins. So it was nice to see them, have that moment.
It's certainly, I think we talked about it. Don't you think it sort of paints the idea that the independent sector of the industry, their big the big movie that they want to champion is Train Dreams, right? Usually the movie that wins this award is the movie that traditionally this sector champions into the Best Picture nomination. And we saw that happen with Train Dreams scoring 4 Oscar nominations. I think what's kind of interesting here to talk about is how important is that vote going to be anyway? Because when you talk about these industry people who very clearly like Train Dreams, they like how it paints independent film in America and the US. They want to champion it. They're also very much industry members who are likely going to vote in various categories for Sinners and One Battle After Another, because Ryan Coogler and Paul Thomas Anderson are very much tied into sort of the independent industry. Even if they're not making quote unquote independent films or films that qualify for these awards, they are the type of films that independent artists in the US like to champion. You know what I mean?
Right. But I also think there's something interesting happening this year in that it feels, maybe because of where we're at as a country, as an industry, it feels that the bulk of the attention is for these bigger budgeted mainstream films and much less for independent films. I think you see that when the top 5 films nominated for the Independent Spirit Award, only one of them really has a realistic chance of even, placing, because only one of them is in the Best Picture and Best Picture 10 for the Academy, Train Dreams.
Or was even close, right?
Yeah, exactly. And even Train Dreams is like number 8. You have these bigger budgeted films, whether it be, huge films like Sinners or One Battle, or films that are still bigger budgeted. They don't fit in the independent space, but they're also not as big as those 2 other films like Hamnet, Marty Supreme. And then you have a slew of foreign films that people are passionate about. So really the quote unquote independent pick this year is really down the line. It's
Right.
really number 8
Yeah,
at best.
it's not this. I think what you're trying to say is that there isn't as much focus on it, for example, in the time that we're living as there was, for example, in 2015, 2016, right? Remember when you had 2016 Manchester by the Sea, Moonlight, all these
but even
movies.
last year, Anora.
Yes.
Anora was, the consensus pick for the industry, but also for the independent community.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that this year. This year, the bulk of the attention has been for these bigger budgeted films and for foreign films.
Right.
And so I find that interesting. And I think I can't help but feel that has to be a consequence or an effect, reflecting the kind of time that we're living in.
So you think maybe it's emblematic of the fact that like these quote unquote bigger budget movies that don't qualify as these small indies anymore, but are not these ginormous tentpoles and are very much artist driven, that there's maybe a focus in the industry in saying that sort of film is in trouble and runs the danger of being extinct, maybe certainly with the support of places like Warner Brothers, for example.
Right.
And so it's kind of important that we support that kind of
Well,
film.
no, I think that's true. I think that's very true. But I think what I'm pointing out to is just how strange it is to have a year where the top independent pick is not anywhere near a possible Best Picture winner.
Yeah. It's not a top 5 pick.
Right.
It's not a top 6, 7.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's reflected in the nominations because the films that have the most nominations are not independent films.
Right.
And so I think in a way this year we saw a moving away from the independent film community in terms of the films we were most quote unquote passionate about for the Academy, I guess, or when I'm speaking, I guess, in terms of the Academy members, not as a whole. The films that we had that people that were in the independent sector that people were very passionate about, whether that be Train Dreams or Sorry Baby or If I Had Legs I'd Kick You, or a slew of other independent films, none of them really were able to, capitalize into a top 5 contender for Best Picture.
I think that's an excellent point.
Last year we didn't see that. Last year I think we saw Anora had the best of both worlds, and it had mainstream success, it had independent success, international success. This year it feels very much like the mainstream populist films won. They kind of won that war in a way, even though I hate to say populist because I think certainly One Bad After Another is an incredible film, my favorite film of the year.
Right.
And Sinners is, much more than just a populist film as well.
But studio-backed movies.
Yes, exactly. With these huge budgets and these huge campaigns. So I find that interesting, and I wonder if that's the direction that we're going in as a reflection of everything that's going on in the industry at the moment.
I think that's an excellent point, and I think that's something for us to dig into possibly more next year. You're right, though. The overlap between the Independent Spirit Awards this year and the Oscars is so marginal. So that is certainly noteworthy. But the big winner was Train Dreams.
Right.
Rose Byrne got a chance to go on, get on stage finally.
I feel like, and we've said this, the Jessie Buckley win for Best Actress is probably the easiest race to call this year. So this will be Rose Byrne's one of the last awards that I think Rose Byrne will get for If I Had Legs I'd Kick You. Some people, I feel like Rose Byrne and A24 have to be incredibly happy of how far she's come. She ended up nabbing all 4. She got the Globe, the SAG, the BAFTA.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people in this filmmaking community that want to see her have this moment. It's a great performance that deserves all the recognition, but I do feel like, she's very far from Jessie Buckley. So this was really the last award almost that she could win. Yeah, exactly.
No, that's an excellent point. I will say Eva Victor got a chance to get on stage for the Screenplay Award for Sorry Baby, which was nice to see.
Yeah, Lurker was one of my favorite films last year, and I won both the first feature and the first Screenplay Award.
Right. Sorry Baby maybe came close to a nomination at the end, but it's great to see her accept this. 2 awards that I do want to talk about briefly, because I feel like these 2 categories, I don't know, you tell me, but in the closing weeks of this year's Oscar campaign, I wonder if they're getting a little tighter. And the first one is the category of international film. So the Independent Spirit Awards went for The Secret Agent, which has been pretty consistent, right? But we're gonna talk, I think, in a little bit about what happened at BAFTA, which could be interesting. And then the other category that maybe we can talk about just a tiny bit now is documentary went to The Perfect Neighbor, right? Which has felt sort of like a safe pick all year, but something interesting ends up happening at BAFTA too. On top of the idea that Gita is a double nominee this year, right? And so certainly you see what I think is the two favorites in this race, right? Just like from a numbers point of view, The Secret Agent for international film and The Perfect Neighbor for documentary. But I want to say that in these closing days of the race, this is going to get really, really tight between who's going to win this.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah. So with that, I don't know if you want to jump to
BAFTA?
Yeah,
I think there's a lot to talk about BAFTA because, you know, as everyone knows, there's overlap between the BAFTA and the Academy. But
in terms of membership.
But more importantly, I think that if you're seeing certain surprises at BAFTA, I think that could very well be a sign that there stands to be surprises at the Academy, especially when we have a year where, you know, it's not like 2022 where Everything Everywhere All at Once did rather poorly, but it wasn't nominated for that many to begin with, and it was the most nominated film at the Academy. When we have a year where Sinners and One Battle and a film like Handed and Marty Supreme at BAFTA were among the most nominated films, and they're among the most nominated films at the Academy, expect to see certain surprises that we saw at BAFTA to start repeating. And I think it's very, very telling.
All right. So let's start unpacking this. Where do you want to start?
Well, why don't we start with the very interesting statistic that a film that walks away with 0 wins at BAFTA, despite being heavily nominated, that does not bode well for the Academy.
I love it. So you want to start with the biggest loser at BAFTA. And so the biggest loser at BAFTA was none other than A24's Marty Supreme, which is a Best Picture nominee and was nominated, I believe, 11 times. And so it tied Hamnet for the 3rd most nominations. And it, you know, only tied itself as most nominations and least amount of wins. And so what you're saying is, historically, a film that does that poorly at BAFTA, that is a Best Picture nominee,
several nominations,
and scores 0, very often does not end up walking away with an award at the Academy Awards. And this is interesting because
it's important to note it is possible to win something at BAFTA and walk out with 0 at the Academy.
Certainly.
That's true, but we're saying the opposite.
Yeah.
If you win 0 at BAFTA, the pattern is you stand to win 0 at the Academy.
And maybe if we hyper-focus this a little bit more, the expectation was that Timothée Chalamet would win Best Actor at BAFTA. It certainly looked like Timothée Chalamet expected it, but I think most of the community expected it. He did not have a previous BAFTA win. Right. He's a multiple nominee.
Right.
And so I think the idea was that Timothée Chalamet was going to finally win a BAFTA on his way to an Oscar. Remember, Timothée Chalamet was always possibly going to have a little bit of trouble getting the SAG win because he's coming off the win for Complete Unknown. But being BAFTA-less could hopefully open up the path for him to win Best Actor. That did not happen. They actually went with, I believe, Richard Aramayo for I Swear, which was kind of a surprise, but the room and the ceremony really showered a lot of love on that film.
Yeah.
But
I do feel like it's important to not dismiss Aramayo's win as being, oh, well, it's BAFTA. The film did really well at BAFTA. It's beloved at BAFTA. Of course it was going to win. Hold on. You know, the fact that Aramayo, who's not an incredibly well-known actor, can win in a race among the presumed favorite like Timothée Chalamet or even among the competition, I think bodes really poorly for Timothée Chalamet. I think it exposes significant cracks in his presumed favoriteness. And we're going to continue to talk about this as we make the last final sprint to the awards. I think we're possibly in a place to get a surprising result for Best Actor at the Academy, because there's a lot of factors here going. And so among them is the fact that there might be some people who were turned off by the tactics that were used to market Marty Supreme and that Timothée Chalamet really kind of, embraced. Unfortunately, I do think there is a bias in terms of his celebrity and his dating life. I do feel that there are people who look down upon that.
You have also now a little bit of a tarnish on the Marty Supreme.
Right, you have a little bit of the Marty Supreme tarnish
on what was already an extraordinarily unlikable character.
Right, that's the other thing. Quote unquote unlikable characters, as interesting as they may be for all of us cinephile fans, are not typically what's embraced by the Academy.
Right.
That's something else that I think we're going to talk about when we talk about someone like Teyana Taylor. These characters, that are very complicated and are, not afraid to show their teeth. Unfortunately, the Academy likes to brand their winners. Every win is an endorsement,
right.
And they liked their winners to be more embraceable in a way.
Right.
So that was always something that was challenging for Timothée Chalamet anyway. So I think the fact that he lost this BAFTA, I think, is humongous.
Throw into that the fact that he would be a very young winner at the Oscars. Right. There's just a lot. It's a lot that he has to go up against now.
Right. I know that people mention that it's sort of following in the footsteps a little bit. That basically that a win at the age of, barely 30, puts him in company with someone as enormous as Marlon Brando.
Iconic, yeah.
And so I think there are some people who are hesitant to do that and to sort of put those two alongside each other at this very moment. And especially for a film like Marty Supreme that might walk out empty-handed. I'm pretty sure Marlon Brando, when he won his Oscar, that film was the Best Picture winner also. His first Oscar was for On the Waterfront.
Yeah. Which was the Best Picture winner, as you said, but also a huge winner that year at the Oscars.
So, I just don't know that there's enough people that want to put those two alongside each other, like I said. And I just think there's a lot of cracks in the quote-unquote Timothée Chalamet game.
Right.
And I think that not unlike when we saw someone like Mikey Madison win at the BAFTAs, I think it's a telling moment. I think it's a telling moment for this lead actor race that Timothée Chalamet did not win.
All right. I think that you're pointing to a lot of really interesting things. I would just want to run a few numbers here. So Marty Supreme gets 0 BAFTA wins after getting double-digit nominations, including Best Picture. The year before that, A Complete Unknown scored 6 BAFTA nominations, 0 BAFTA wins, on its way to 0 Oscar wins, where it had more than 6 nominations at the Oscars. And Timothée Chalamet was coming off a SAG win for playing Bob Dylan. The year before that, Killers of the Flower Moon got 9 BAFTA nominations, including Best Picture, I believe. And it lost all those BAFTA nominations on its way to scoring 10 Oscar nominations, I believe, and getting 0 again, including a loss for SAG winner Lily Gladstone.
Yeah.
Then you look at a year like Don't Look Up, which got 4 nominations at the BAFTA, including Best Picture, on its way to getting 0 Oscar wins. 2020 had Trial of Chicago 7 get a Best Picture nomination at BAFTA, 3 nominations, scored nothing at the Oscars. Irishman is another double-digit movie, 10 BAFTA nominations. I think that's the last time there was a double-digit movie other than Marty Supreme. Irishman, 10 BAFTA nominations, including Best Picture, no BAFTA wins, on its way to no Oscar wins. Yeah. And so the last film to get nominated at the BAFTA for Best Picture and lose every single BAFTA nomination it was up for and still recover to win at least one Academy Award was Moonlight.
Right.
That was able to get the win for Best Picture even, and was also from A24.
But I will also say a big, something at least to consider is, number one, BAFTA doesn't have a great track record when it comes to films of people of color.
Yes.
And also Moonlight that year was only nominated for 4.
Yeah.
It was only nominated for 4
It was only nominated for 4.
And
including, I believe, just to jump on that point for a second, it was nominated for 4, and I don't think they listed Moonlight in the adapted screenplay category. So that's one easy win you could have given it at BAFTA, but it couldn't because it was competing in original, right? Whereas at the Oscars, they listed it in adapted.
Right. And so I think that a Moonlight 4 4 nominations at BAFTA is different from a Marty Supreme 11 nominations.
The Marty Supreme 11 is the most since, and it surpasses The Irishman,
right?
Which ended up getting the 0 BAFTA wins and ended up getting 0 Oscar wins. And so our mind is saying, did BAFTA put a path where Marty is going to be a big goose egg on Oscar night?
I think it's revealing that that's where it stands in the race. You know, when you look at a film like Frankenstein, for example, I think it would be easy for that film to also walk out with 0, except that it's so tech heavy that it stands to win at least those 3 techs.
Right.
Costume, production design, and makeup.
Yeah.
If not, we'd having the same scenario with Frankenstein. Marty Supreme just doesn't really stand out enough in any one race.
Right.
And the only one that it can, which is actor, is problematic.
Right. Actor is problematic, as you said. One could have made the argument that had the movie been positioned better, I certainly believe this, had the movie been positioned better, had you avoided some of the pitfalls of the discussion that occurred with the slight controversy, could you have positioned it better in the original screenplay category? Right? When you have sentimental value, it's just lacking steam, and it seems like everyone wants to go ahead and reward Ryan Coogler for what is traditionally not, the most conventional screenplay movie, right? Because of the nature of the movie it is. Could there have been possibly earlier, had you played your cards better, could you have maybe placed Marty in a better spot for the screenplay category? Maybe. Yeah. Maybe that could have been a win for it.
Maybe.
But I agree with you. I think it doesn't help that Marty is truly only competitive in that one category. Whereas, for example, I thought A Complete Unknown certainly was a strong competitor for Best Actor for Timothée Chalamet. And I didn't think it was a bad spoiler for like the sound category, but every other category that Marty's in, as you said, feels far. It feels like the award for Marty was the nomination. And so it begs the question, at the end of the night on the Oscars, how many nominations did it get at the Oscars? Like, I think
9.
Was it 9?
9.
Are the 9 nominations for the A24 $95 million movie that doesn't say a whole hell of a lot about an important issue or about visibility? Is that enough of an award for a first-time Safdie nomination? 9 nominations, that is the award.
Certainly that's the path that I think that the temperature is paving.
Right.
I will say some of the other numbers we went through. Carol received 9 nominations at BAFTA, but it only received 6. It didn't even get nominated for Best Picture at the Academy.
Right.
The Imitation Game did walk out empty-handed and at least won the screenplay category at the Oscars.
BAFTA really broke for Theory of Everything that year instead of Imitation Game.
But then this is an interesting one. Zero Dark 30 walked out 0 with 5 nominations
from BAFTA.
And at the Oscars, it did win 1 Oscar for sound
with a tie.
But I guess what I'm trying to point out is that was an underperformance. So my point is that it reflected what ended up being true anyway, which is that even if it won sound in a tie, it was set up to be an underperforming night for them.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's what I think the BAFTA is revealing about Marty Supreme. It should be an underwhelming night for them.
It's almost like after the BAFTA gives you the big 0, it's can you survive to at least 1 win, which is what we're discussing
here. But I'm not sure that the 1 win you could possibly survive could be the biggest win.
Possibly.
You mean Best Actor? An acting one.
It's possible. I mean, like I said, the only film to do better than just surviving to a win was Moonlight. And again, it had a lot of large cultural, social, industry sentiment behind it. Keep in mind, they read the wrong damn name off the envelope that year. So, like, yes, it's possible, but when Moonlight staged that in such a major way, and the other films are Imitation Game is able to squeak out with a screenplay win, and Zero Dark 30 can squeak out a sound editing win in a tie, I think what we're saying is, can you survive to a Best Actor win, especially with all these other elements that we're saying sort of clouding the ether as to how excited voters are going to be about that.
Exactly. And then I think I want to mention 2 other, before we go to more analysis, 2 other acting wins that I think are very telling. And we'll start with the easier one, or maybe not easier one, but we'll start with supporting actor, and that Stellan Skarsgård did not win, which I thought was very, very, very surprising.
He was the favorite.
Yeah, he was the favorite. Instead, Sean Penn won for for One Battle After Another, I think it's worth mentioning that Sean Penn only has one BAFTA.
No, this was his one BAFTA.
Oh, this is his one
Yeah.
BAFTA. Right, we talked about
Yeah.
it. So that probably could have had a factor,
I think it was a major factor.
you know, in that this was the only BAFTA that he has. I think it's interesting that overall they picked Sean Penn over someone like Benicio del Toro, and I think that's because Sean Penn has the more showier part
As
than
the
Benicio,
villain, yeah.
even if technically Benicio would be my favorite performance of the film, and it was certainly what the critics' favorite. It's not the showiest part. The showiest part belongs to Sean Penn,
Right.
the antagonist. There might be goodwill because of, especially at BAFTA, as you were mentioning to me the other
Right.
day.
He's
Because
a
of
strong
his efforts,
advocate,
right,
exactly for the effort in Ukraine,
Right.
and you know what that obviously means for the greater European
Right.
Union.
Exactly. So maybe that played a part. But the point is that, you know, we felt, or we have been feeling, that Stellan Skarsgård should be the favorite in this race because of his veteran status.
Yeah.
Because it's the kind of role that wins these kind of, that wins supporting actor, this aging director coming to terms with his, you know, fallibility as an actor.
Unless
as a father.
or maybe some voters sort of sick of that, like, yeah,
Could
it's
be.
an aging director, and yeah, it's
Could be.
Skarsgård.
It
you
could
know.
be. But I do think things change when we talk about the Academy voter, because Sean Penn has 2 Oscars.
Yes.
So
So you're saying is that this win for Sean Penn does not necessarily position him in a very credible spot to win supporting actor.
Right. Exactly. And so I think the situation will be a little bit different at the Academy, but certainly it was surprising for him to lose.
To win.
No, Stellan Skarsgård to lose this
surprising
award.
for Stellan.
So that's one to keep an eye out for. I also feel that sentimental value should not go out empty-handed when it comes to the Academy. It didn't go out empty-handed here either, except that the one award it won was foreign language film. And I know we'll get to that in a minute.
Jump to that.
And my point is that sentimental value, like The Secret Agent, should not go out empty-handed, because I think there's a lot of love for those films. So in the event that The Secret Agent prevails in foreign language film, as it is deemed right now the favorite, then this is the award that you can give sentimental value.
You know, I like a lot of what you're saying, but then I think about, for example, sometimes you're just in a film, not unlike Marty, I guess, that's well liked enough, but I wonder if it's loved enough. So I
think it's 9 nominations shows that it is very loved.
You know what? And I think that's completely valid. But I had always been of the opinion that the place to award sentimental value, if it's not going to be in a very competitive international film category, would be something like screenplay. He's a writer-director. He is known for his writing. He writes rich characters with really precise conflict and in really specific situations, and sometimes very imaginative and oftentimes reflective of the industry. And yet it feels very far from winning that category.
Right, but that's the thing. I think that in a different scenario, it wouldn't be far. In a different scenario, it would be the winner. The reason that the waters get muddied is because we have Sinners in the middle, and that's obviously a very beloved film that stands, in our opinion, to not win Best Picture or Best Director. So it really stands to be the only way that you can award Ryan Coogler.
Yeah.
You and I are of the opinion, as I think we've spoken to some people who feel the same, that the screenplay is actually one of the weakest parts of Sinners. Really, you have a voting base voting for not just Ryan Coogler and their admiration for Sinners, but also sort of the spectacle of it all and the concept of it all, more than necessarily the writing or the screenplay of it all.
They're very much like awarding Ryan Coogler the visionary behind it, not just necessarily the writer.
Right, exactly. And so I think that's one reason that you are not seeing sentimental value clean up in that category. And what makes it even more reason to have, it needs to have a win in its pocket. Well, it needs to have something, and the best place you've got, if you're not going to give it foreign film, is this supporting actor.
Now, what I would say to that is, I think that there's possibly a lot of validity to that, is are we possibly in store? Because I do think that the screenplay for sentimental value is very much what they would usually go for. Stellan Skarsgård is what they usually go for. Sentimental value is going to be very difficult for it to leapfrog Sinners for original screenplay. We're questioning about Stellan Skarsgård. Are we really just possibly going to watch an Oscar ceremony unfold kind of like 2022, where it was very clear that the best film among the consensus was Everything Everywhere All at Once. And you were either Everything Everywhere All at Once or All Quiet on the Western Front, squeaking out a few categories. Are we about to see a ceremony where, yeah, the 9 nominations for Marty, that is the win. The 9 nominations for Sentimental Value, that is the win. The 4 nominations for, F1 or Secret Agent or Begonia, that is the win. And so we're just going to end up seeing the winner for every category is going to be what my favorite film was. And so when you have a category of one battle for Sean, one battle for Benicio, Sentimental Value, Delroy Lindo is in that category now for Sinners. Is this category going to be another one of those? Well, the win's going to go to either the one battle guys or the Sinner guy, the Sinners guy. It's not going to go to Sentimental Value because for me, it's my 4th favorite film or my 3rd favorite film on there.
I mean, it
we
could
maybe be seeing that.
I mean, I think that's possible. I just think that on Oscar nomination morning, it became apparent that it's the preferred foreign film. With 9 nominations, it really overperformed. Add to that all 4 actors got nominated besides not being nominated at all at the SAG. I think you have genuine love for this film and genuine goodwill post The Worst Person in the World. I think it's a film that appeals to the European art house base as well as the American art house base. So I don't see a scenario where it walks out with 0. And I don't know that it's flashy enough for some to win foreign language film over a film like The Secret Agent. But we could have a scenario where, for example, Wagner Moura wins Best Actor and Sentimental Value wins a foreign film. But what can happen is that either of those 2 films walks out 0. I really see that not happening. And like I said, there's a prime spot here because both Benicio del Toro already has an Oscar, Sean Penn has 2, Jacob Elordi, the nomination is the win, and Delroy Lindo is a surprise. And it's also not, meaty enough for what they usually give this award to. So really, he's the most obvious pick.
Now, on the downside to what you're saying, basically his campaign is over. Like, it'll be Stan Skarsgård. If he is an Oscar winner, all he had on the road there was really the Golden Globe as far as telecast. The Critics' Choice went elsewhere. BAFTA went elsewhere. Wasn't even nominated for a SAG. Yeah. And so that's not very often that happens.
That's true.
That's a good point. That someone will go just from a Golden Globe, one Golden Globe, into a Best Supporting Actor win or an acting win.
That's a good point.
That's not always that happens. And he may be able to do it because, again, not only everything that you said and everything you said about the movie, but also his longevity as an actor. Right. And again, he's worked in America, he's worked in the UK, he's worked all over the place, and that maybe helps. But I will say it seemed to me like most people in that room at BAFTA were expecting Stellan Skarsgård to get on stage, and he did not.
Yeah, so, I agree. I think that's one to watch out for. And then you and I were incredibly happy.
Oh my God, man.
That Wunmi Mosaku won Best Supporting Actress. We have been on the Wunmi Mosaku train forever. We thought that her time would come at the SAG, but it came at the BAFTA, which makes perfect sense. And for us, it has always made sense, given the competition, that Wunmi Mosaku stands the best chance of winning this award because her 2 biggest competitors have enormous detractors. And that's, Tana Taylor, technically, I mean, in my opinion, would be my pick personally, and she is one of the critics' favorite, if not the critics' favorite. Certainly the top critics. But her character is complex in a way that it's not the type of performance that they like to award. Remember, every win is an endorsement of a sort.
Most of the time.
I think she's very handicapped also by the fact that she has very few credits. This is one of the first films that many Academy members are seeing her for the first time.
She's very young in her career.
She comes from a background in music. Again, there's hesitation sometimes to give an artist that's just beginning their, Oscar moment, especially if you, like I said, it's a complicated character. I can think of Ariana DeBose most recently who did it. But, she doesn't necessarily come from a music background as much as a theater background.
But she's also being helped by the iconic nature of
exactly.
the role.
She's being greatly aided by the fact that she's playing Anita. And so I really feel that there have always been these enormous holes in Teyana Taylor winning for one battle after another. Amy Madigan is the film's only nomination for Weapons, and that is certainly not the kind of performance that wins these awards. She'd be winning more than anything because of her veteran status.
Right.
But is that veteran status enough?
Right. And again, she went without the BAFTA nomination. Keep that in mind.
She did not get the BAFTA nomination. And so, you know, her biggest attraction is, again, the role that she's playing, the movie that she's in, and being the film's only nomination. So really, you're the perfect person to position for this award is Wunmi Mosaku, because she is, for many, one of the most memorable parts of Sinners. She's incredible in the film. She's a beacon of light and warmth in the film.
She has the ending.
She appears in the ending in a very emotional moment. She has a very respectable filmography. She's worked in international projects. She's worked in American projects. She's a person of color who's established a very formidable career.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's the kind of quote unquote endorsement that they would flock to.
Right.
Wunmi Mosaku winning for Sinners. And we
had maybe picked some of this up, remember, back in the Gothams, when the jury, a jury of, industry artists and peers voted the supporting win, and they gave it to Wunmi Mosaku. And we sort of said, yeah, she really fits that bill. Yeah. Right? Not just in terms of the character that she's playing, the movie that she's in, but also the kind of actor that she is and where she is in her career. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I feel that at BAFTA, you could tell that people were genuinely happy to see her have that moment. She was very eloquent and she spoke lovely. And it just feels like she's at a stage in her career where she's more ready for this award than Teyana Taylor is. I just don't think they've seen enough yet of Teyana Taylor to give her the Academy Award. And Amy Madigan would make sense because she's a veteran, but I don't see Aunt Gladys being an Oscar-winning role.
It's very tough. As you said, it's tough, and it's tough as the film's only nomination.
Yeah.
I think that we had always said that the momentum was gonna shift towards Wunmi, and I think we're starting to see that.
Yeah.
And so, like, she could not be peaking at a better time.
Yeah.
I also think we had this discussion, like, it's kind of interesting where, like, giving Sinners an acting award, I think, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But I also think, of how circular these awards races are. I mean, we're maybe 3 years removed from when Angela Bassett was at one point considered a favorite to win for Ryan Coogler's Wakanda Forever, Black Panther 2.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I think there's this symmetry here of like giving now the supporting actress win to Wunmi for an original Ryan Coogler movie that maybe some voters are going to like be aware of subconsciously.
I didn't think about that. That's a great point.
That could end up materializing here. Yeah. And so we were quick to say that it could quickly break in her favor, and I think we're starting to see that.
Yeah, I think that, when the nominations came out, you and I, and then we said as much in our episodes, watch out, Wunmi Mosaku is in this to win this. And we're seeing that play out. Again, we mentioned foreign language film, The Sentimental Value won that award.
That's a big one.
That's a really big one, because the last year that the BAFTA didn't correlate with the Oscar in terms of the win in this category, was for The Handmaiden, I believe.
Well, actually, that Handmaiden was the last time before last year.
Right.
Because the BAFTA ended up going to Emilia Perez, which was a top 5 film. Right. And everyone was still pegging Emilia Perez for the Oscar, but the campaign sort of imploded, which left an opening for Brazil. And I'm Still Here. Right. But before that, you're right, it was The Handmaiden, like in 2017. Which wasn't even nominated for an Oscar. And I think the eventual Oscar winner that year, A Fantastic Woman, wasn't nominated for a BAFTA either. So you can sort of say that they were destined to diverge.
Yeah.
So this year, there's a lot of overlap, right? Sentimental won, but Secret Agent is a nominee at BAFTA and an Oscar. Jafar Panahi, it was just an accident, as a nominee. Sarat, and I even think that the BAFTA nominee was also Rahim Rajab. Yeah. So BAFTA here has the 5 Oscar nominees for foreign film. It ended up breaking for Sentimental Value, as you said, right? Because it got so many BAFTA nominations, right? The question is, do you think it repeats it? And again, this kind of goes back to what we were saying about the Secret Agent winning the award at Independent Spirit Awards, right? So the momentum you would think is for the Secret Agent. It has the Golden Globe win for international film. It has Independent Spirit Award win. It probably has the most critic mentions for international film. And yet, BAFTA went with Norway, Sentimental Valley.
I wonder if something that could play out at the Oscars is that since Brazil just won last year for I'm Still Here, they might be more prepared to give it to someone else, another country.
Interesting.
So I think that's something to keep in mind as something that could play out in this race. But nonetheless, it was very important to see that Sentimental Valley prevailed. There is strong correlation between the BAFTA winner for foreign film and the Oscar winner as well.
And obviously, it was the most nominated of the foreign films at BAFTA, including a Best Picture nomination. It is the most nominated foreign film at the Oscars, including a Best Picture nomination. Secret Agent also has the Best Picture nomination. You said it's tough to imagine either going home empty. I'm going to, take a little caveat here and say, between all this infighting of, Norway getting 9 nominations, including Best Picture, getting the BAFTA win for international film, and The Secret Agent being able to survive to 4 nominations at the Oscars, including Best Picture, but missing major nominations at BAFTA, missing the win for foreign film at BAFTA. I want to say that the door has not closed on a win for It Was Just an Accident. And for France, because remember, France was the actual submitting country for Emilia Perez, who should have won last year before everything sort of, before the crap hit the fan, right? And so, look for France to try to exploit this little bit of a gap and make up that win from last year.
But also, especially what's going on in current events.
Everything that's going on in Iran right now, everything that, Jafar Panahi has been advocating right now, very much on the last leg of his little tour, that has taken him away from Iran and very much going back to Iran as soon as he can. Watch out. The door is open here between a Sentimental Value is so handsomely nominated in all these other places, and maybe I'm going to give it to Stellan Skarsgård. Secret Agent was the Best Picture nominee, but I just gave it to Brazil. Watch out for a makeup for France here and for a win for Jafar Panahi and, a surrogate win for Iran.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And on a similar note, the BAFTA has strong correlation between the BAFTA winner for documentary and the Oscar winner for documentary, and it's very interesting to see that Mr. Nobody Against Putin won that award.
And was able to beat The Perfect Neighbor.
Yeah. And then last year they went with, the BAFTA went with Superman, Christopher Reeve's story, which wasn't even on for the Oscar. But before that, the last time that the BAFTA win for documentary diverged from the Oscars was American Factory.
2019.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting in the sense that maybe The Perfect Neighbor isn't able to score the win at BAFTA because it's very much a U.S. story versus Mr. Nobody Against Putin Again has larger global ramifications. American Factory was still able to score that win at the Oscars, right? So I do think, as we said, it's going to be a little bit of a tight race between Mr. Nobody Against Putin and Perfect Neighbor, especially because I think that win for Mr. Nobody Against Putin has a lot to do with, the state of the world that we're in terms of how different nations are behaving. And I think there's also a lot of support from the Danish government to get that movie made. And so there's a lot of, I think, urgency amongst advocates for the movie to try to get the movie seen more broadly.
Yes. But again, The Perfect Neighbor is also very timely. And so, absolutely. In terms of the American zeitgeist, I think, it still stands a very good chance of prevailing here.
We talked about, though, and we'll talk about it in our closing predictions, about the whole double nomination, which is really interesting for Gita. Will that pop its head in?
Maybe. Yeah.
It's possible.
For animated features, Zootopia won.
Which is actually not a big surprise. I will say Zootopia 1 did not win. It lost to Kubo, so Zootopia 2 finally won. I think the big story here was that K-pop Demon Hunters was not nominated. So it could not win. And the films to win the Oscar for animated feature are BAFTA nominees. And so that is going to be the biggest hurdle for K-pop Demon Hunters. On the plus side, right? K-pop Demon Hunters was still part of the ceremony.
They made it a whole moment. They made it a whole moment.
They made it a whole moment. Netflix pulled enough strings. They had a whole performance. And so, is that enough to sort of say, there's still the lack of a BAFTA nomination is not going to stall K-pop Demon Hunters.
Right, exactly. Very interesting win for cinematography that went to one battle after another.
Yeah.
The last time that the BAFTA winner for cinematography diverged from the Oscar winner was in 2020 for Nomadland. The year before that, the last time it happened was in 2011 for The Artist, and then in 2010 for True Grit.
Right.
So there's
So not
very
very
strong.
often.
Yeah, there's a very strong correlation. The win for one battle here is really cool.
Michael Bowman, yeah.
Right.
I think we have to wait to see what happens with the Guild. We're going to have to wait to see what happens with the Guild because I think 4 weeks ago, I thought that this was going to be an easy win for Autumn.
You're right. And we talked about it. You know, this seemed in the bag for Sinners. But as we've seen with, the industry so far and
some critic awards,
it feels like it's not so in the bag for Autumn.
Yeah.
And, in many of those races, the voting bodies have preferred something like Train Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if when it comes to the Oscars, especially if Train Dreams is really liked by a certain sector, especially the independent community, that's really a place where you can give something to Train Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't give it screenplay, you can't give it picture, and you can't get I guess song is competitive as well.
Yeah.
So really, it's one of the awards, one of the categories that Train Dreams can actually win something.
Right, because if you're sort of stuck between something is turning off voters about Sinners, right, and Michael Bowman, as an amazing job as he did, he doesn't have the filmography to sustain a win. You're right. Is this possibly just an easy spot to say, well, I loved Train Dreams, I want to give it something. And this is what I got. Yeah, and maybe, again, it could be sort of like a film where it's like cinematography first, sort of like when you see one battle after another and you make a list of all the things you loved about it, maybe cinematography is not 1, 2, or 3.
Right.
And the same thing with Sinners. Maybe it's not 1, 2, or 3.
Right.
But for Train Dreams, a lot of people might put that at number 1.
Yeah, I agree.
For the most memorable thing about the movie.
I agree.
So you got to watch out there.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think we're looking at a possible upset here. And very interestingly, the BAFTA sound winner was F1 over something like Sinners, which I think bodes very well for something like F1 to win. A lot of it predicated on, race car, driving, must have included a lot of sound there. So here it is. So watch out for this to be the place where they give F1 something.
Unless, again, we're saying it's a year where we're gonna be okay giving some movies nothing. I mean, we certainly are in agreement, for example, that Begonia will not get any Oscar wins.
Yeah.
And so the question is, do they really feel compelled to give F1 at least one win? Maybe. It could have gotten more nominations. Like, it could have gotten that song nomination, didn't get it. But you're right. If they're like sort of like Train Dreams, again, if you loved it that much, and if there's one category where you said the 3 most memorable things about it, maybe sound is high enough.
Well, I think there might be a section of the Academy who feels like they're kind of, again, this is getting into the brain of Academy voter, which, is not a place you want to be in. But they might think, well, in giving Sinners the best score, I'm kind of awarding its sort of soundscape in a way. So I don't have to give it score and sound.
Yeah. Very seldom. Very seldom do they feel
even
like
though didn't Black Panther do that?
No, Black Panther did not win the sound categories. That's kind of interesting to me, is that like Ryan Coogler has shown up, his films have shown up in this sound category before, and he hasn't won them yet. And that's why I thought, like, midway into the year, this should be an easy win for Sinners. But it seems like, as you said, sort of the late surge of, there was a race car movie and it did pretty well, and it did well enough to even get a Best Picture nomination. If that's sort of de facto, well, I guess the race car movie has to win sound if that's going to end up happening.
Yeah, I think we're heading there for sure.
Yeah.
Some other interesting statistics we came up with, that obviously one battle won Best Picture and Director and Screenplay at the BAFTA, and that's a very powerful trifecta. A film like The Artist won all 3, went on to win Best Picture. The Hurt Locker went on to win Best Picture. So I feel there's very little room here, as we said at the top of the show, for one battle to lose.
Right.
I think that's a done deal. Some other stats we looked at, BAFTA Best Picture and Director winners who went on to lose the Oscar for Best Picture. You had films like The Power of the Dog, which won Best Picture and Best Director at the BAFTA, 1917, Roma, La La Land, The Revenant, Boyhood.
And I think what's interesting about that list of movies that do well at BAFTA with picture and directing wins and fail to get the Best Picture win at the Oscars, and sometimes even the director win, if you look at something like 1917, is that most of the time that's preceded by a strong showing or a good showing by another film at the SAG Awards, or a poor showing of those films at the SAG Awards. For example, 1917 obviously did not do well at SAG. Roma didn't do well at SAG. Power of the Dog didn't do well at SAG. And so that really throws the spotlight at, on the SAG Awards.
Okay, and on that note, let's start talking about the SAGs, which, now the Actor Awards, I guess. I'm going to call them SAG, which just happened last night. And I feel like there's a lot to unpack in the quartet of winners that they selected.
I mean, I definitely think it was a night that shifted some things around, but it also is emblematic that this is the kind of race this year where there are big cracks and craters and a lot of things. It's going to be, what it seems like to me at least, it's going to be hairline finishes in a lot of races, right? And I think maybe the smartest thing to do is let's start out with the race that is possibly least consequential, and that was Jessie Buckley continues to walk, right. And so she won Best Actress at the SAG.
Yeah, as we mentioned before, she's going to be the Oscar winner, so it's the easiest race to call this year.
And so most people were predicting her. She won. It was a good speech. It was kind of brief.
It was kind of brief.
But so that race is, nothing has happened to that race. It's very much cemented still the way that we had sort of predicted.
I will say I thought it was quite lovely that she took a moment to mention Emily Watson, who is one of our great actors, who certainly doesn't get enough flowers for her talent and her work. And so it was nice to have a moment to have her spotlighted in this televised ceremony, because I do feel that she has a very small part in Hamnet, but she does a really beautiful job. She's lovely. She has a couple of scenes that I thought she really nailed and were really resonant. And it was just nice to see Emily Watson have a tiny piece of that big cake that is the success of Hamnet.
I absolutely agree. I think at this point, the biggest sort of question mark for me in terms of the Best Actress race is like, how good can Jessie Buckley's speech be at the Oscars? Like, I have high hopes that I think of all the individuals who are still likely or possible to win or favored to win in their races, I don't think anyone's going to come close to delivering as eloquent and heartfelt a speech as Jessie Buckley. So I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Me too.
The other thing that I think is kind of interesting is that, as we mentioned, with voting going on at the same time, Jessie Buckley's actually going to open up a movie with her friend Maggie Gyllenhaal. And so it'll be sort of interesting to see that play out in the background. And so maybe we'll comment on that because, if the movie is a complete train wreck, which I hope it isn't, and I don't think it will be, but if it is a complete train wreck, it would not be the first film to take down a front runner. But
it's very unlikely.
We're searching for stories here in the Best Actress race.
Also because it's also the success story of Hamnet, and it's really the award that you can give Hamnet, because I just read today that it's really close to breaking 100 million worldwide.
Wow, which is really impressive when you consider that I don't even think it broke 20 million in the States.
I don't know about that. All I know is that right now I think it's at like 94 million.
Wow.
Worldwide, global.
Right.
And that's a very impressive feat, especially for a film that was made for like 35 million. And so, I guess I'm just implying that the train that is Hamnet is just too hard to stop.
Right.
And that, even if, I don't know,
The Bride
is the next Razzie Award winner, I don't think anything's taking down the hurricane that is Jessie Buckley and Hamnet.
All right. No, I think you're probably right about that. Like I said, we're searching for stories here. Otherwise, we're just waiting for Jessie Buckley to win the award. Okay, so then maybe the next best category to discuss is one of the few categories at SAG that had some overlap with BAFTA, kind of like Jessie Buckley, but is a race that remains undetermined, and that's Best Supporting Actor. And so we saw Sean Penn repeat here for a win for one battle after another, much like he did at the BAFTA.
Important to remind listeners that Stellan Skarsgård was not nominated here. Neither was anybody from Sentimental Valley.
Right. And so I will say, let's discuss the win for Sean Penn. You're right. Let's set this up the right way. Sean Penn beat his co-star Benicio del Toro and he beat Stellan Skarsgård at BAFTA
Right.
among British voters. And then over at the SAG US acting base, he was able to beat again his co-star Benicio del Toro, and this time, but this time he did not have to face off against Stellan Skarsgård. I think something that's also important to mention here is that on neither occasion did he beat Delroy Lindo.
Yeah.
And also another important thing to talk about is that this is Sean Penn's second SAG win. Right? He had one for Milk, and this is his first win in supporting actor. It's his second win. He was snubbed for Mystic River in 2003 for Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean. He ended up winning the Oscar for that. And over at the BAFTA,
he had never won a BAFTA.
Mentioned, he had never won. And so we're on two-time SAG nominee Sean Penn. I'm sorry, two-time SAG winning Sean Penn, one-time BAFTA winning Sean Penn. Can we really see a three-time Oscar winning Sean Penn this year?
Right. And I think you're completely right. I think that this particular race is kind of tough because Stellan Skarsgård wasn't there. we are still a little bit puzzled in that, the miss for Sean Penn at the BAFTAs, I think can be quite telling because Stellan Skarsgård was there and Sentimental Value was liked and he still won. It's a tough race, but I think we come back to the point that one battle has to win or should win at least one acting award, because the trend has been that if you win Best Picture, at least you won, an acting award, at least one. And if that holds true, I mean, again, it's not written in stone,
it's an assumption,
but it's certainly the trend.
Yeah.
Then, you have three options to award one battle: actor, supporting actor, and supporting actress. And you and I feel very iffy about Teyana Taylor prevailing in supporting actress, especially after losing both the BAFTA and now the SAG. So I don't think that's going to go to Teyana Taylor. So you're really between actor and best supporting actor. Can Leo win his second? I mean, he hasn't gone up to accept a speech in a televised award show just yet. He already has an Oscar. Do they want to give him one, 10 years later, or they want to wait? I mean, everyone knows that Leo's going to be back and back and back.
Right.
And as it was, and we're going to get into the best actor category, as it was very evident, Michael B. Jordan had a lot of love in that room. Mm-hmm. So I'm not even sure that, what Leo's got is enough to tower over someone like Michael B. Jordan. Anyway, all that to say that, if we X the acting categories of actor and supporting actress, all you've got to give one battle is the supporting actor category for Sean Penn, who hasn't vote splitted, as you mentioned, with Benicio del Toro. I think you were thinking that maybe there was a chance that Benicio could sneak in there.
There is this award ceremony.
Right, there is a timeliness to his part, to his role. But again, I told you that it's just way too nuanced. It's not really what they go for. The Sean Penn performance is a much showier performance, somewhat antagonist. I mean, obviously, the antagonist, the villain. So, I'm not surprised that Benicio didn't get up there, but I think it means something that vote splitting hasn't happened between the two of them in those two ceremonies.
Right, and it's broken in favor of Sean. I mean, we'll have to analyze this again in the coming weeks, so watch out for our final predictions. But one thing we'll have to sort of run the numbers on is, especially in the supporting categories, whether that SAG and BAFTA, when those wins overlap, if that isn't a bit of a dagger, a bit of a kiss of death in terms of, beating out the rest of the competition. And so Sean has that now. The issue that we really said that we were sort of highlighting is that Sean is so much further ahead at the Oscars than at either of these two ceremonies. And so winning 3 Oscars is a very precious thing. Yeah. Right. Daniel Day-Lewis was able to do it. And he did it all in the lead acting category, which I think he's there by himself. Jack Nicholson has a supporting actor win. So I think it does help for Sean, for example, that this would be his first win in supporting actor. Yeah. But that being said, you have to wonder if the Academy voters are going to be very excited to give Sean Penn a third win. And Sean Penn, has a history of being a bit of a prickly character in and of himself with the Academy and with the industry. And that's
who knows
part of his charm.
Who knows how it rubbed them?
Yeah,
when he gave away his Oscars,
right? And he's had plenty of criticism on the ceremony in the past. Now, I will say another interesting factor here, Sean Penn hasn't been on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that ends up playing out.
Yeah.
Right?
As not having had a moment to capitalize on the moment.
Exactly.
But I think you also brought up a very good point about Stellan Skarsgård earlier when we were chatting, and that's that maybe we're assuming too much that Stellan Skarsgård is a quote unquote super beloved actor. Certainly he's one of our great actors who's been around for such a long time. It's crazy that this is his first nomination. He's one of our most prolific veteran actors who works internationally and in American projects.
Right.
But maybe there's a reason why this is his first nomination in the when he's in his 70s. Who knows how beloved an actor he is. Maybe not enough to sort of tower over someone like Sean Penn, possibly. And you brought up a really good point. We were talking about Emily Watson. Emily Watson has only been nominated for 2 Oscars and has never won. This is Stellan Skarsgård's first nomination. Is it make a lot of sense for Stellan Skarsgård to walk out with a win? Emily Watson has yet to win.
Yeah.
And they both had that very powerful moment with Breaking the Waves.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe the loss at BAFTA is as much a, pro Sean Penn vote as much as it is a, I'm okay with Stellan Skarsgård.
Right.
I don't have to give him the award.
Right.
But on paper, it is the performance and the role that typically wins this category.
I think that's completely valid. Yeah.
Right. And I think we can't argue that, sentimental value is liked. And it has 4 acting nominations. So I think that still bodes well for someone from that movie prevailing, and obviously can only be in supporting actor. It's a tough call.
And then the other thing I'll say, just to extend the conversation a little bit more, is, Delroy Lindo actually has not been nominated very much for this movie. He was able to get the Oscar nomination, but he has been on stage plenty.
Yeah.
Right?
Sort of a surrogate,
exactly,
speaker
for Sinners whenever
yeah.
it wins a prize, such as it did last night. And so there's sort of this unknown factor here, right? Which is, if we're faced between Stellan Skarsgård getting his, first win on his first nomination, in a movie that is clearly liked and loved, but not as much as the 2 frontrunners,
right,
or Sean Penn getting his third, if there isn't an opportunity there for Delroy Lindo and the Sinners campaign to exploit and sort of give a prize, not unlike Jamie Lee Curtis in Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? And give the supporting actor prize to Delroy. The only difference there being that Jamie Lee Curtis won these bigger awards, right?
Yeah.
That Delroy failed to even be listed at.
Right.
Right. And so that, I think, is still very much a possibility.
I agree. It's a tough one. And my gut says that Sean Penn doesn't win a third.
3 is very difficult.
I think he will win 3. I think he's one of our greatest actors ever, and certainly very respected by the Academy or by members of the Academy. I'm just not sure that this is the part that gets him his third. I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me. At the same time, it doesn't sit well with me for one battle to go out empty-handed in terms of the acting races.
I think that's. I understand your conundrum, and I think this is another hairline difference between who's going to end up winning this category. I think it could go really any way. So this is going to be a very, very, very difficult category to predict.
And then moving on to Best Supporting Actress, also a very tricky category. I thought this was a prime moment for Wunmi Mosaku to land the win, especially that Sinners was really loved and the award ceremony as a whole.
Right.
But as we said, she kind of already did that at BAFTA. She kind of started that train at BAFTA already.
Although it would have been great.
It would have been nice for her to BAFTA and SAG, right? It still remains in the air. But for me personally, when I saw that Amy Madigan won for Weapons, made me feel more sure that Wunmi Mosaku can take that category. Obviously, as you said, it would have been better if she had won the category, but if her main competition isn't Teyana Taylor, who should have won this if she was really going to win the Academy, the Oscar, If her main competition isn't Teyana Taylor in the Best Picture winner, or the very likely Best Picture winner, and it's Amy Madigan, who is the film's only nomination for Weapons, in a role and a performance that they don't typically award they don't typically give an Oscar to. They just don't. That's why the film had so much momentum and still failed to land anything but Amy Madigan.
Right.
In a category that needed a veteran.
Right.
That helped too.
Right.
Then I feel like Wunmi Mosaku can beat Amy Madigan.
Kind of funny that it's kind of come down to possibly the two Warner Brothers.
Yeah. Well, it would have been either way, because the three top contenders were all the Warner Brothers contenders.
Right, but these two in particular had a lot of like speculative witchcraft and voodoo behind them. So I think that was kind of interesting.
No, I think it's interesting, but I remember someone who I won't name on Twitter saying that, oh, how cool is it going to be that maybe it's going to come, the supporting actor is going to come down to two witches, Amy Madigan and Ariana Grande for Wicked, which is,
obviously.
Yeah. But I agree. There's an interesting symmetry to that. But again, why wouldn't voters faced with that decision say, well, I'm going to go for the movie that I liked more, which is obviously Sinners,
right?
Which is nominated for 16 and broke the record. Why would they say, no, I'm not going to go for Sinners and I'm going to go for the film that was only one nomination? I agree. And has a, character stabbing their face, is very much in the realm of, mainstream horror.
I completely see that logic. I also think there's a bit of a symmetry here, right, with the supporting actor race, in the sense that in very much the same way that Stellan Skarsgård missed that SAG nomination, which isn't a killer for an Oscar win. Case in point, Regina King for If Beale Street Could Talk back in 2018, but it's never great, right? Amy Madigan missed the BAFTA nomination for Weapons, which again is not always a killer, but again, it's not great.
No, it's not.
And
so she was shortlisted.
And so there is something sort of like an interesting symmetry there.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I understand the Amy Madigan argument because she's a veteran and she's never won, and this can be probably the last moment that she has, possibly. To capitalize on an award.
Right.
I get all that. The problem is the vehicle she's in. That's just not the thing that wins an Academy Award.
I also
for
wonder,
acting. It's just not.
I also wonder if it's gone.
And again, if they're going to kind of, sidestep that a little bit and give it to a performance or movie that doesn't typically win those categories, well, Sinners is right there too, which is very genre also.
Yes. I also wonder if it's gotten around in the industry yet, just the idea that like they're going to keep making on Gladys movies. And there's going to be a sequel with Amy Madigan, and I'm sure there'll be a prequel at some point. And so if that sort of knowledge is something that is going to turn off voters, I wonder if that's gotten enough traction. And so that could end up being a factor. These sort of more populist, audience, commercial-friendly movies, I think about, remember Meryl Streep for The Devil Wears Prada, which I'm thinking about Devil Wears Prada 2, and she's wonderful in Devil Wears Prada 1, but you don't win an Oscar for playing Miranda.
But also, I think the win for Amy Madigan for Weapons here at the SAG reminded me a lot of the win for Demi Moore for The Substance last year, which is that the voting body at the SAG seems to really respond to these sort of populist picks and these, zygusty social media driven narratives, in much the same way that Demi Moore was benefiting from, the movie that she was in and the narrative that she that she could be winning for a movie like that. Stands alongside this idea that, I saw Weapons. It was a huge summer hit. It was so much fun. I had a great time watching it.
Right.
She was a gas,
right.
On Gladys, so I'm going to vote for her.
Right.
But I think the mentality shifts when we go to the Academy, who I think are a little bit more serious-minded about what they're going to give the ultimate award to.
I think fair.
Populism and mainstreamism isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then but I will say, to counterbalance that just a little bit, winning for a populist film in the supporting race is not the same as
Right,
winning
right.
for a popular film in the leading race.
That's
I
true.
remember, when Heath
That's
Ledger
true.
won for The
Yeah,
Dark
but
Knight.
even Demi Moore, who was probably really close to winning, at least her film was nominated for Best Picture.
Also true.
Right.
That's
And
it was
Weapons,
and a Best Director, too.
Right,
It was a big
exactly.
movie.
And
Yeah.
Weapons is nowhere to be found
Yeah, it's a
besides supporting
solo.
actress.
Yeah. So this race, again, certainly not solidified, but I think you and I are thinking this was possibly more than anything a pretty significant blow to Teyana Taylor.
Yes. I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah.
Because if Teyana Taylor had any chance of winning, in my mind, we would see that strength somewhere at the BAFTA or the SAG.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she's missing those, I think, goes to what we've been saying, that she just doesn't have enough credits. She's too new.
Yeah.
And her character is just too prickly
Yeah.
to want to endorse for a win.
Yeah. And I think I just want to point out like one last thing. Again, just the symmetry of the whole thing, where like Teyana did have a pretty big win at the Golden Globes,
Yeah,
right?
huge.
Happened to be the only stop along the race where Stellan Skarsgård was also able to win. And so I think that's like an interesting idea that like the Globe winners, the SAG winners, the BAFTA winners, none of them match. And so the question is, what kind of mix are we going to get at the Oscars? Or are we going to get an exact match from somewhere? Like, is it going to be the two exact Golden Globe winners, for example, because we don't want to give Sean Penn a third, so here's for Stellan, and we want to give one battle and acting win, and so here's one for Teyana. So I do think I'm going to be looking at that till the very end.
Right.
Because it's kind of, I don't remember the last time it was this spread out.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
And then the final, I think, acting category, individual acting category to talk about is probably maybe the biggest category of the night, which was Best Actor. And we'll start off by saying, that, it continued to sort of show that Marty Supreme is really lagging here.
Right. I think that possibly it would be a different story if he hadn't won the SAG last year for Complete Unknown. Possibly.
But
I know the odds were stacked. Exactly. I know that he was, I think, the favorite in Gold Derby to win, but you and I knew very well that it's very unlikely for him to win back-to-back. The amount of people who've been able to do that at SAG is a very, very small number.
I think on the film side, the last actor that was able to go back-to-back was Renee Zellweger for Chicago and Cold Mountain with a category shift. And so Timothée Chalamet would have done it in the same category, which is not great. But we talked about it. We had a discussion about it after we finally saw Marty Supreme, which is, man, Marty Supreme should have come out first, and then A Complete Unknown should have come out, and then The Complete Unknown would have been a walk. He would have walked with A Complete Unknown.
Yeah.
But there's just so many difficulties in getting Marty Supreme, as a Best Actor bid, through the finish line.
Yeah, I think you're right. It continues to show that there's huge red flags for the Timothée Chalamet win.
Right.
For all the factors we've already said.
So he's going to go into the Oscar race with essentially a globe.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is the same story with Teyana and Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah.
Which is interesting too.
And I will say, like, he has, quote unquote, still an edge over Wagner, who's going in with just a globe, but Wagner's going in with a globe and significant snubs, right? And in these precursors.
Right. Exactly. And, we were predicting, or at least our prediction was for Leonardo DiCaprio for one battle after another. I know that he was not among the top favorites to prevail here. Our reasoning, I thought, was pretty sound, which is that, again, one battle, if it is the Best Picture winner, as we firmly believe that it is, it should work out with an acting award. If you're going to give the acting award to Stellan Skarsgård and you're going to give supporting actress to possibly someone like Wunmi, then really all you've got is actor. And actually, actor wouldn't be a bad place because A, Leo is a beloved actor who's going to have more than one Oscar. And B, in this competition, I think, when we're talking about Wagner Moura, who doesn't have a SAG nomination or didn't have a BAFTA nomination despite being on the long list, and we haven't yet had a foreign performance win that wasn't, nominated at SAG. Marianne Cotillard did get nominated at SAG for La Vie en Rose. Roberto Benigni did get nominated at SAG for Life is Beautiful. Adrian Brody did get nominated for The Pianist. So, Wagner Moura is missing that crucial SAG. It should be someone like Ethan Hawke because of his veteran status, and this is his fifth nomination, his third acting nomination. But I think the film, it just stands to appeal to, a lesser, less people in the Academy. It's very static, so it's kind of niche also.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Timothée Chalamet with the detractions we've already mentioned. So you're left with Leo DiCaprio or Michael B. Jordan.
Right.
Which
happened to be the two front runner movies.
And exactly. And my point is that, or my reasoning was that after seeing Sinners, and I don't think I'm being biased here, but I think that the character and the performance that Michael B. Jordan gives in Sinners, I don't think is loud enough. He is playing twins, but apart from that, I think it lacks that sort of monumental showiness that they tend to award. Again, Sinners is a very ensemble-driven film, by and large. And so for me, it's really hard for me to picture that being a performance that wins Best Actor.
Right.
Whereas for Leo DiCaprio, I can see him getting a second Oscar. It would make sense for him to get a second Oscar for a film that dominated the award circuit and that is going to win Best Picture. And a film that, years down the line, people will remember as being a very iconic film, like One Battle After Another. It makes sense for someone like Leo DiCaprio and his stature to win a Best Actor prize with a movie like that.
Right.
And yet he's yet to this was the moment, I think, for that train to start.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
Yeah, they passed it up.
Instead, they said, I'd rather give it to Michael B. Jordan for Sinners.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen in Actor?
I mean, I think that this is, again, going to be an extraordinarily difficult race to call because now you have possibly the two most pivotal awards. You have one going to Richard Aramayo, right, at BAFTA, and then you have Michael picking up the SAG. And again, there's a lot of unconventional aspects to giving the win there. At the same time, we have to look to see the last time an actor was able to pull out this victory without any major stops on the telecast portion of the campaign, which is the situation for Leo, right? At the same time, I do think this was a major setback for Timothée Chalamet and a major setback for Ethan Hawke. Right. And so maybe the one sort of like the Delroy Lindo logic, the one person who was possibly not touched by a decision to give this award to Michael B. Jordan is possibly Wagner Moura because he just was not present.
Right.
And he was not present when Richard Aramayo won at the BAFTA either. And we've talked about sort of, again, just this weird symmetry where like if we're stuck between an unconventional win for Michael B. Jordan on his first nomination, Timothée Chalamet having those detractions, Leo DiCaprio winning a second for this particular role, Ethan Hawke not having the strength in the momentum of the film to pick up a win. If this isn't a moment to make up for, Brazil, for example, the loss for Fernando Torres last year, right, which seemed like it could possibly capitalize on that Globe win and pick up the Oscar. Is that going to be the logic? And we talked about it with foreign film. Like, can the logic be this year, I'm going to skip Secret Agent for foreign film, even if it's the favorite, because I just gave it to Brazil. Yeah. Can the same logic exist in Best Actor in the sense that, I didn't give Brazil a major acting award win last year. And with this competition, I feel comfortable giving it to Wagner Moura and him representing a win for the Secret Agent.
Film, yeah.
I also think it's interesting in the point, again, that symmetry here, which is that Wagner Moura, again, is on the Brazilian side, but on paper, and I think on paper, there's a lot that is attractive about the idea about Ethan Hawke winning, right? And he's being campaigned by Sony Picture Classics, who was campaigning Fernando Torres last year, who they weren't able to finish it off. But I remember when Ethan Hawke got the shout out from Richard Aramayo, right? And Best Actor. And I wonder if, voters pay attention to things like that. Again, if this is the competition, am I just going to give it to Ethan Hawke because he's Ethan Hawke kind of thing? I wish he would have gotten an award, but this is one of those races where like it's really tough to tell if these awards are going to matter or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's really, really confusing. I don't like that Wagner Moura didn't get that SAG nomination as we said.
Again, not many people win without that. That's what killed Fernando Torres.
Yeah. If there's a foreign performance, again, as we said, it should have landed somewhere at SAG, even if it didn't end up with a win. It didn't even get a BAFTA nomination, and he was shortlisted.
Actually, I'm not sure if he was shortlisted, but no, he was not.
I think he was.
He might have been, but I'm not sure. I'm I'm not sure, but he did miss
right
that nomination.
Right. And so I just don't see the Michael B. Jordan performance being
able to go all the way.
Yeah, I don't think it's showy enough for them. I think it's still too a part of this ensemble.
Right.
Doesn't stand out enough, in my opinion.
I mean, it's crazy because we're going to end up with the Golden Globe drama winner versus the Golden Globe comedy winner versus the SAG winner versus the only actor who's actually won before in this category, who's in the Best Picture frontrunner, and then the only veteran actor on his first leading acting nomination who hasn't won before.
Yeah.
Right. So
I mean, honestly, on paper, Ethan Hawke makes the most sense for a win.
Yeah. But when was the last time somebody won without a major stop somewhere?
Yeah. And I think you also made a good point as to when was the last time an actor that was representing a company like Sony Picture Classics ended up winning the Oscar without showing up anywhere else in terms of winning a precursor.
Yeah.
A televised precursor.
So this thing is all over the place.
It is. It's going to be really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the room certainly loved Michael B. Jordan.
They did.
They went
very crazy for that win. Yeah.
They were very enthusiastic.
Which means that most of the room was not crying about, oh, it's not Ethan Hawke,
right.
or oh, it's not Leo, or oh, it's not Timothée Chalamet.
Right.
And that could be a pretty powerful thing. But when it comes time for the Academy, as you and I have discussed before, you're going to get British voters who just said no to Michael B. Jordan, and you're going to get a lot of international voters. And Sinners is not the same sort of international phenomenon that it is in America, in the U.S.
100%. I think that's an excellent point.
Factor.
I think that's an excellent point, and I think that's something that hopefully our listeners and everybody who's covering this race should be aware of.
Yeah, they should take that to heart.
You know, a Sinners in America is not the same thing as Sinners, worldwide.
That said, there was enough Sinners phenomenon among voters, whether in the U.S. or abroad, for it to be the most nominated film in Oscar history.
Right.
And so this is going to be a very tricky race.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's Ensemble that went to Sinners, which I thought was which I felt very sure that it was going to be Sinners with an outside shot for One Battle. Actually, One Battle pretty underperformed a lot because it only got one.
It got one. I think the caveat there was that, yes, Sinners won, but One Battle broke the records. So you would think that it would have maybe broken for One Battle at the end. That did not come to pass, as you said.
It was clear that the, acting, the union was most enthusiastic about Sinners.
Right. And it sort of makes sense, as you said, about, the union, these awards becoming a little bit more populist, right?
Exactly.
Because Sinners is certainly a much more popular film than One Battle After Another.
Yeah, 100%. Right? But I still feel pretty confident about One Battle prevailing on Oscar night. At least I do. And I think this was the big night for Sinners in terms of, kind of winning almost everything that it's up for.
It would be interesting if they flip, right? In the sense that One Battle breaks records at the SAG, fails to win the big award. Sinners breaks records at the Oscars, possibly fails to win the big award. But if you and I are feeling, like we said, confident that Sinners is in a spot right now where it should win at least one acting award, right? In Wunmi, and now we have the potential for Michael to surprise. And it seems like no screenplay is getting even close to it in original screenplay. You got to be careful that there isn't going to be just enough favor for that movie among those two elements. Add to that it being the most nominated film in Oscar history to really give One Battle After Another a run for its money. I also think there may be a possibility here where between the two Warner Brothers films, they want to split it and say, share the wealth for Warner Brothers. They take Best Picture and Best Director for two very different films. And at the end of the day, I would rather not give Best Picture to One Battle After Another because it is the more touchy film, right? A little bit too close to reality.
Yeah, but that's its biggest asset.
Its
biggest asset is, voters, at least the recent pattern has been, the winner needs to represent something, significant,
right?
That I want to communicate with my win.
Yes.
And while there is certainly very rich, issues at the root of a film like Sinners,
right?
There's just so much blatant, correlations,
right?
and one bad after another.
Right.
That I think that, again, that's part of its secret weapon.
But I agree with you. It could be part of its secret weapon, but I do fear that there are going to be some people who just would rather say, I don't need something so close to reality right now. And so we'll see if that ends up showing up. But I do think, the race is getting a little bit tighter.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we covered a lot. We covered a lot of important precursors that were happening while we were away, and hopefully we're up to speed. Again, we'll be updating those charts so you can check them out, those prediction charts, and you'll see all the precursors and all the awards on there.
And we'll be posting up a few more episodes discussing our final predictions across all of the Oscar categories, so you can make your final decisions, play your Oscar pool.
In the coming days, yeah.
So look out for that in the coming days. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for joining us again, and it's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, visit us on our website, framesandflicker.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Academy and On. And then until next time,
this is Joseph and Jules, and it's been a pleasure.
If you've been enjoying the Academy Anonymous podcast and want to support the work we're doing, there's a voluntary support link in the show notes. Totally optional. Just a way to help us keep the podcast going. Thank you for listening.
The music on this episode, entitled Cool Cats, was graciously provided by Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. http://licenses/by/3.0.
Disclaimer. The Academy Anonymous podcast is in no way affiliated or endorsed by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences.